Hey everyone, Vicki Basinger here. I'm the Director of Central Services at Village Church, Illinois, and we're here for a special episode of Village Church Q&A. Just over a week ago, it is March 3rd, and we saw the attack of Ukraine by the Russian Federation, and we've been getting a lot of questions from you, so we decided to film this special episode, and we didn't feel there was anybody better who could weigh in on this topic and help us answer some questions than Brian and Sandee Rhodes. Thank you guys so much for coming in. So for those of our folks who don't know who you are, if you could tell a little bit about who you are and why you are or how you are tied to that area of the globe.
Sure. Well, we're Brian and Sandee Rhodes, and we have been here at Village Church for a long time. How many years have we been here?
Over 10.
A lot, over 10. And we have lived in Eastern Europe. We lived in Budapest, Hungary, for about 3 years, so that gives us some experience on the ground. But I would say that we're kind of like all of you. We are just two people that have fallen in love with the people group, and ours happens to be Central and Eastern Europe. And Ukraine is our largest country associated with Awana, which is who we work for. And Awana is the kids ministry that we love here at Village and a whole lot of other churches in the United States and 130 countries around the world. And Ukraine is the largest country using Awana in Europe. And they're reaching, I think I'm going to blow up the numbers. It's way over 30,000 kids and over 500 churches. That I know. So if I'm wrong, forgive me. I'll get you the numbers another day. But the reality is God has been using the ministry of Awana to reach kids there. And now all of a sudden, everything is just blown up. And so I have to tell you, this is emotional for us. At times, you'll probably even sort of hit a button that's kind of emotional. We've sort of been a wreck. It's hard to think about anything else because we've just got people on the ground literally that are fighting wars. And even now already, even today, it wasn't of our people, but another ministry that's on the ground there already sent out a story about one of their staff that has been killed fighting in the war. So, and we know there's going to be more of that. So that's why we're here. We just want to share what we know.
Yeah.
We're not experts on the area. We are certainly not political experts, but we want to share what we do know and maybe be able to mostly share how and you can help.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
This effort.
Well, and ultimately, that's what a lot of people here stateside and all over the world who are not in that area are wondering, how should the local church respond or in what ways should the local church respond in a situation involving a war, whether they're there on the ground, actually in the Ukraine, experiencing it physically, or over here watching it. Just watching it unfold and wondering what steps can we take. So, just kind of from your experience, you have personal contacts who are over there, who are living in this situation. What are you seeing from the church and from missionaries over in the Ukraine?
That's a great question, Vicki. We're hearing stories after stories about. So we're getting videos daily
every day
from our people in Ukraine, and just sharing how they're running somebody to go get medicine for some of their Ukrainian fighters. And many of them are civilians. They're just fighting for their country. They're not all enlisted soldiers.
Sure.
And so there are some needs. They were running food and water over. They were running extra clothes because it was really cold in the nights. They're taking people that need to go to a doctor's appointment. They're bringing a couple in, who were driven out of their, town. And so it's really a beautiful thing to see the church come outside of the walls because they can't meet within the walls. And the church is being the church. And, many families are just finding what the need is. And instead of sitting around walking by fear, they're walking by faith and saying, God, what do you have for me to do today? And that's how the church really in Ukraine is functioning. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see.
That's incredible. And you were telling me that just this morning you were, shopping for supplies and, local churches around here even pitching in, trying to be physically able to help on the other side of the world. And it's just incredible to see God's people rise to that occasion.
Right.
So you've mentioned you get videos every day. Obviously, living in this era of social media, you can hop on Instagram and see people, streaming directly from the streets over in Ukraine. Have you guys experienced in your time in ministry any other situations that have been like this? And is this time different? Or how have you really kind of experienced any type of conflict and seen the church rise in that situation?
Yeah, I think we've seen the church rise to natural disasters. Certainly, not necessarily just in Europe, but tsunamis and different world disasters we've seen, whether it's the Philippines. And the church has always stood up to the issue and tried to help the people that were in need in those situations. I think we've seen that a number of times. In fact, I think the church steps up just about every time that there's a situation like that. I think this is different. First of all, I'm probably older than any of us at this table. Sandee's just a few weeks behind me.
But you are older.
That's
but
right.
we are
You
older.
This is on the record.
And I am
right?
the oldest. And, in my lifetime, we haven't seen war on the continent of Europe. And it's a very unique and ugly war because it's a war of brothers and sisters. This at one time was the Soviet Union. They were all Russian-speaking language countries that went across borders, and so people came and went. And regardless of the political side of that, they were people who grew to be families. And so today we have literally Russian people living in Ukraine and Ukrainian people living in Russia and many of the other countries that surround that were all part of the Soviet Union. So now we've got a very difficult situation where even when the church is saying we need to step up, we have Russian believers and Ukrainian believers, some of which are in the country and they're Russian and trying to figure out, do I need to get out because I'm Russian? Or Russian church people over in Russia saying, how do we help? But I can't help because my government says I can't. It's a very unique problem that we're really faced with. And the Ukrainian church has been fighting a war now for 8 or more years with people coming out of the South and having to already deal with refugees. And then overnight, the entire country becomes a country of potential refugees because everyone is getting literally on trains, not even necessarily knowing where they're going, but just to get out of the bombing that's taking place in the city. And the Russian army is bombing every major and even most mid-level cities right now on an ongoing basis. So the church has, I think the church has to be overwhelmed right now. And one of the reasons Sandee and I want to get over there is to get a better feel for exactly what is really going on the ground. And, we often say that, there's a political side to the news from Russia. Well, I think we'd all agree. I'll look at the camera. I think we'd all agree that there's a political side to the news here in America, too. So sometimes the best thing we can do is get on the ground and figure out what's really going on and how can we help and how can we help the church. You asked a question, though, Vicki, how does the church need to help? The church needs to pray. Our church here needs to be praying. The church in America needs to be praying. We need to really get on our knees and really ask God to give wisdom to those leaders there that are in the churches trying to figure out what can they do to help. And that's the biggest need we have. And it's always the biggest opportunity we have is to pray. But we really need to be praying now and really asking the Lord to just give them wisdom. I think the church people that are there on the ground, our church, we love discipleship here. And discipleship happens on Sundays, but discipleship happens during the week, right? And discipleship happens in a peace era of a country, but discipleship happens in a war.
Yeah.
And right now, discipleship is still going on, and the church's job is to disciple. And I think that's what they've got to be doing on the ground, is
Yeah.
to be discipling.
For sure. Well, and, we've talked a little bit about that. As a Christian, what do you do in a war? Do you fight? Do you flee? Do you stand up? Do you run? Is it dependent on your family situation? All of these things that these people are facing right now, not just in Ukraine, but also we've talked about the Russian people who are also dealing with the fallout of this particular circumstance. So prayer is not the least we can do, but one of the most powerful things we can do.
Absolutely.
And just remembering to call the church to do that with specific prompts, I agree, is so, so important. So you mentioned that you guys are looking forward to going there. Can you tell us a little bit about what's next for you?
Sure. So one of the families that are near and dear to us fled. And so, you mentioned, each family has to decide, are we called to stay or are we called to go? And, you imagine sitting around a table and having a family try to figure out, okay, do we send some? Do we all go? Do we not go? Yeah. Now, we know there's an age where the men cannot leave. So from 18 to 60, men can't go. And so
Most people don't understand that, so explain that because that's not really understood here. The men between 18 and 60 have to stay in the country.
They're required by law.
Yes, they are.
To stay.
Yes, they are. And so in this case where, we know a family where the grandparents have taken the grandchildren and they've gone over, but the kids have stayed back.
Their children.
Have
to stay.
The parents of these, children. And so here you have, 4 generations, okay? And the great-grandparents don't have travel papers, perhaps. So they're, they stay.
Yeah.
And then the grandparents, which are our generation here, are over 60, so they can go. And then the children that are under 18 can go. And so the parents of these kids sit down and say, we're making a family decision. And so I can't imagine sitting around the table and deciding, okay, you need to say goodbye to your parents. Right. We're going to take you and preserve the generation, right? Because they don't know. Every day when we make contact with some of our people, we say, just checking in, how you doing? And their response is, we're still alive.
Yes.
So that's really different. I mean, we're just rejoicing, but you imagine every day facing the day with, okay, I'm alive. So God, what do you have for me today? And so when, you mentioned that I had gone shopping, it is this family, they have everything that they need back in Ukraine, but now they fled and they're in another country and that deems them refugees. And they took a backpack. I think that was it.
Whatever they could carry.
So now they have needs. And so when I asked, what are some of those needs? How can the church here help? And so his response was, we're used to giving. I don't know if we can receive, and it's time. It's time to receive. You have some needs, so share those needs so we can do that. But it's just, this is where, when this first happened, I just remember feeling so helpless. It's like, okay, and I'm sure many around the world are saying, what can I do? What can I do? And God just gently reminds me that it's never hopeless. You may feel helpless, but in Christ, there's always hope.
Amen.
And so, around the world, that's what the church has to look at, is that blessed hope, not an anticipated expectation, but the hope with the capital H that says Jesus Christ is our hope. And the church can be that light. And the darker it is around us is a greater opportunity for the light to shine. And so here we are. And our family that's gone to this new country is saying, I can't sit still, but I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, you know what? God's going to show you. And they're just ready to, to minister where they are. To what did they say? 1 million have now crossed over somewhere, have left Ukraine and have crossed over to another border, another country.
So 1 million have fled, and then countless more have just moved west away from conflict, and just so many people who have just up and left all of their belongings, every home they've ever known, and so many families split apart. And just remembering those people, regardless of your political thoughts and everything, that this is about people, and these are real people who have been victim of just this horrible war, and bringing them to the Lord with that hope is just so important. So we'll be praying for you guys as well, for safe travels. I know you have a few things that you need to, take care of before you go as well. And we're just so grateful for your continued ministry and the ministry that you all have done over the past several years. One other question that I'd love to, get your perspective on. So many of us have, children who are, maybe processing this or semi-processing it. How would you, tell parents, how can we talk about this with our kids? What kind of help can you give us as we're helping them process that and discipling them, as you said, through this from the other side of the globe?
Boy, that's a great question. I think we get an opportunity to sit down with our kids. It's a great opportunity to talk about that in the Lord we don't have to fear. A lot of children are fearful. A lot of adults are fearful. They're even our kids and adults are coming out of fear of a 3-year global pandemic, and so now this on top of it. And I was talking to someone in Romania just today, and they said, I think some of the greatest fear that we have right now is where is the Russian army going to go? Where are they going to go next?
Yeah.
Someone else said, you're going to be in Latvia. Yeah, we're going to be in Latvia for part of the time. That's right next door to Russia. What if they come into Latvia? Well, there's a lot of fear around that. And I think kids have a fear, and probably the best thing to do in my mind is to address the elephant in the room and just talk about that, you may be afraid, but you don't have to be fearful, because God is not the author of fear. That's not where fear comes from. And when whether it's someone going out there to be in a country that's only one single border away from Russia, or whether it's a child trying to figure out, how do I go to sleep at night, helping them just to understand that fear doesn't come from God. We don't have to be fearful because we can trust in Him. And just bringing that reminder back to our children. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay for you to have feelings that make you wonder about things, but you can trust in the Lord, and you can trust in His promises that we have. And I hope that's what we can go and talk to kids about, and adults as well, because I think there is a lot of fear right now.
But our faith has to be so much bigger than our fear. And, sometimes that's easy preaching and hard living. And just reminding children that although there's big things going on, and the world seems to have a lot of, evil or even yucky things going on, that God is so much bigger than that. And that we can take our fears, and we can cast all our cares on Him, and He'll carry them for us. That that He never leaves us. And
so true.
But it's got to be scary for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they were, for the last couple of years, it's been stay away from people because you don't want them getting COVID and so forth. So there's already a lot of fear that's been kind of just based on our world currently. And so this just adds to that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being a parent today. I just can't imagine. There's just so much going on that it can really drive a lot of fear, but really helping children to understand that, God takes care of all of these things, and we can turn them over to Him. He loves us so much.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the big truths that we talk through at Village Kids is, that God always takes care of His children. And just seeing that in even small cases where, you're seeing people on the ground care for each other in Ukraine, neighbors taking in neighbors, helping ferry them across borders and things like that. And how, even through the toughest of circumstances, God always takes care of His children. And I think that it's important for even us as adults to remember that we are still children even when we're grown. So. Are there specific ways that we can be praying for you guys, or any specific requests that you guys would like to put before the church family that we can lift up for Ukraine or the people there?
Yes. But before we talk about prayer requests, I just want to say that's the most important thing we need, and we want to give you some of those. But there's also ways you can help. And if God lays it on someone's heart to want to be a part of what we're doing, Awana is on the ground. We are working with other partners on the ground, we kind of looking at several things. The first thing is we really want to make sure our own team, the 11 couples in Ukraine, have their needs met, and whether they're in country or whether they've had to be refugeed out across the border, making sure our own team is safe and have the needs that they have met. Then helping our team that has stayed in to be able to make a difference with the church that's staying on the ground in Ukraine. And there's a lot of needs there, as Sandee said. And we still have ways to get funding into them to help them do what they need to do. And that's part of what we want to go and see, is to get more of an understanding of that. So the churches and our teams that are on the ground in the country. And then thirdly, and this is, I think, going to be huge, because they're saying the number could grow as high as 4 million Ukrainian refugees, is there's in every surrounding country, there's Awana leadership and lots of churches in every surrounding country to Ukraine. And so how can we put God's resources in place there, whether we work with a partner to provide food, because we don't provide food, or whether it's shelter or clothing or whatever those needs are. And those are all significant ways around significantly different groups of people that we can really help to make a difference in. Yeah. And so I just want to make that really clear too.
Absolutely. And we'll, provide those resources on Village Church Digital. If you're watching this video, we'll put it in the comments and things like that. So we'll make sure that that's available to you very easily.
That'd be great. As far as prayer requests, certainly the first thing is just pray. There are folks who literally yesterday might have been doing something like we're doing right now, a podcast, a digital training for leaders in another country, that today their husbands are going out at night to protect their city. They're staying up all night doing that. They're gathering during the day to go provide what's needed for the people that have come from other places. And literally, they're not doing any of these things anymore. So one prayer is just for the safety of these people that are in the middle of this. Russia is a massive army. I can't imagine how the Ukrainian people have held up already, so even this far. And so just pray for their safety and for God to spare the lives of those who are fighting every day for their country right now. That's one. What else do we need to pray for?
I think the children in both places, in Ukraine and also in Russia. I think it would be, they need our prayers for the believers. Yeah. And just for those that have been, it's just, who do we not pray for?
Right. I guess that's a better question.
Yeah.
Yes, the world leaders, as all these decisions are made.
Soften hearts to those that we need their hearts and minds changed. They don't know Jesus. To the refugees who are moms who are consoling their children, saying, not knowing whether they'll ever go back to their home or their homeland. And
babies being born in bomb shelters underground, and all these things that happen every day that we just don't think about being a big deal, all of a sudden are a big deal for these people who are living in these environments. So,
and even in they're in food cellars, the air raids, the sirens go off, and, last night our people on the ground were in their food cellar because, and it said sleeping in their clothes because they just didn't know whether they would be bombed or not. And so, there's just so many needs, prayer needs. Yeah. So.
And I would also ask you, and I really ask all of you to go, we're going to take you with us. We take our village family with us in many of the places we go, and this time will be no different. And pray for us as we go, because I think we need wisdom to encourage our team that we will get to see, and others, and that'll come along the way. And then what we need a lot of God's wisdom to connect us to the right people there.
Yeah.
I think God is going to do a great work through this, a work of redemption. And in that work, I'm just praying that in the short time that we're there, because it'll only probably be a couple of weeks, I really don't think it'll be longer. But in those couple of weeks that God would put us in front of the people that we need to talk to be able to develop the networks that are needed to meet the needs that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And we just ask God to give us, just put those people in our path, and I believe He will. And wherever that is, and to get us to the right places to do that. So
Absolutely.
And my prayer is that we would see just see the needs all around us from God's eyes and not our own.
Yeah.
And it's easy to put the guard up and just, be overwhelmed and but really just take in and help where we can, and then seek help where we need to help meet some of those needs. So we're going to try to get to a couple borders and just see how we can partner with those that are already there, and how we can gather some of our team that's out in Europe and see where we can come alongside of them and help to equip them with what they need to as they're living out there and what that looks like. So just that God would show us and direct us to next steps.
Absolutely.
So,
Well,
such a time as this.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for taking some time to sit with us. I love what you said, Sandee, moving from helplessness to having that hope and that hope in Jesus Christ ultimately, that He is good, He is powerful, He is in control of all things, and just clinging to that hope and teaching our children that hope and lifting up our brothers and sisters overseas in prayer. So thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for listening in to this special episode of Q&A. We'll see you next time on Village Church Digital.